We cannot be credible and successful in achieving our ideals if we do not overcome the last leftovers of the former East-West divide. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President of the Commission, distinguished leaders of the political groups, honourable members of the European Parliament. I should like to thank you for the opportunity to take part in this debate about the future of Europe. And it is a real honour and privilege for me to be here today, as this democratic House represents all European citizens. Human history is driven by a desire to achieve ideals and create a better future. This is exactly what was at the birth of the European Union 60 years ago. This is what started democratic changes 30 years ago in Czechoslovakia. We were driven by ideals of peace, prosperity and unity. The project of the European Union brought peace to Europe, and it brought us stability, freedom and prosperity. It brought us success, and even to smaller countries like Slovakia is. Dámy a páni, slovenská cesta späť do vyspelej Európy sa začala v roku 1989 túžbou po slobode, demokracii, ľudských právach, ekonomickom a technologickom pokroku. Pred 15 rokmi sme sa vrátili tam, kde sme vždy patrili, do západoeurópskeho a transatlantického hodnotového priestoru prostredníctvom integrácie do Európskej únie a NATO. Následný slovenský príbeh bol mimoriadne úspešný. Ale nebola to vždy ľahká a priamočiara cesta. Museli sme prekonať éru ekonomického prepadu a transformácie. Museli sme bojovať s vysokou nezamestnanosťou, zvládnuť rekonštrukciu bankového sektora i štrukturálne zmeny v našom hospodárstve. Vybudovali sme demokratické inštitúcie v novej slovenskej samostatnej štátnosti a prekonali sme aj obdobie demokratickej krízy a zvládli sme náročné kritériá na vstup do NATO a Európskej únie. Rozširovanie EÚ v rokoch 2004 až 2013 bolo klasickou ukážkou obojstranne prospešného win-win procesu. Nové členské krajiny získali perspektívu modernizácie a rastu, staré členské krajiny rozšírili zónu stability a získali väčší jednotný trh. Slovensko je dnes plnoprávny člen európskej rodiny. Patríme medzi krajiny s najvyšším rastom HDP v EÚ, sme stabilným členom eurozóny s relatívne nízkou nezamestnanosťou a z vysťahovaleckej krajiny sme sa za posledné roky zmenili na krajinu, do ktorej viac ľudí prichádza, než z nej odchádza. A zmenila sa aj celková atmosféra v krajine. Naši občania sú slobodnejší a bohatší, no aj náročnejší na úroveň politického života. Tento potenciál využívame na modernizáciu našej krajiny. Slovensko má silnú občiansku spoločnosť a vysokú mieru slobody médií. Sami si však uvedomujeme, že sú oblasti, v ktorých musíme pridať. Napríklad aj v kvalite vzdelávania, výskumného a inovačného potenciálu, kvalite štátnej správy či znižovaní priestoru na korupciu. Ale slovenský príbeh môže byť inšpiráciou pre Európsku úniu aj v súčasnej situácii. Úspešne možno zdolať ťažké výzvy a prekonať veľké prekážky, treba to však chcieť. Už Milan Rastislav Štefánik, veľký slovenský a európsky diplomat a jeden zo zakladateľov Československej republiky v roku 1918, náš francúzsky generál povedal: For people of strong determination and endurance, there is nothing they cannot achieve. Pre ľudí so silným odhodlaním a vytrvalosťou nie je nič nedosiahnuteľné. A jeho odkazom sme sa riadili aj po vstupe do Európskej únie, kedy nás čakalo množstvo ďalšej práce. Prešli sme náročným procesom vstupu do Schengenu a eurozóny. Na svojej ceste v integrácii sme sa nikdy nezastavili, pretože úprimne veríme v silu a správnosť európskej myšlienky. Zjednotenú Európu považujeme za prirodzený priestor pre našu existenciu. Som presvedčený, že iná alternatíva pre nás neexistuje. Toto sme potvrdili aj počas slovenského predsedníctva v Rade Európskej únie. A bratislavský samit vyslal jasný signál jednoty Únie po šoku z výsledkov britského referenda. Na Slovensko, podobne ako celá Európa v súčasnosti, nie je úplne imúnne proti útokom na hodnoty Európskej únie. Aj v takej dôležitej oblasti, ako je sloboda slova. Akékoľvek útoky na novinárov vyvolávajú oprávnenú reakciu verejnosti a videli sme to aj na Slovensku. To je znak veľkej vyspelosti našej demokracie a našich občanov. Pred pár týždňami uplynul rok od vraždy novinára Jana Kuciaka a jeho partnerky Martiny Kušnírovej. Dvojnásobná vražda dvoch mladých ľudí otriasla celým Slovenskom. Spoločensky aj politicky. Ale chcem vás uistiť, že všetci máme len jeden jediný cieľ. Vypátrať a potrestať páchateľov tohto zločinu. A tu chcem vyjadriť aj poďakovanie Európskemu parlamentu, vrátane monitorovacej skupiny pre právny štát za doterajšiu a hoci aj často kritickú spoluprácu. Rovnako ďakujem aj Europolu za pomoc pri vyšetrovaní, ktoré prinieslo svoje výsledky a prví obvinení sú už vo väzbe a čakajú na spravodlivý súd. Dnes za Slovensko môžem potvrdiť, že aj v týchto neľahkých časoch chceme aj naďalej patriť do skupiny najviac integrovaných krajín Európskej únie. Sme pripravení znášať svoj adekvátny podiel na bremene zodpovednosti za spoločný integračný projekt, ako aj spolu formovať našu európsku budúcnosť. V najbližšej dobe nás čakajú voľby prezidenta Slovenskej republiky. Verím, že občania Slovenska preukážu svoju vyspelosť a vyberú si kandidáta s jasným proeurópskym smerovaním. A dovolím si povedať, že strana, ktorú zastupujem a ako vládna strana nemohla postaviť viac proeurópskeho kandidáta ako podpredsedu Európskej komisie Maroša Šefčoviča a aj to považujem za signál o hodnotách dovnútra krajiny, ako aj navonok. Ladies and gentlemen, the success story of Slovakia is to a certain extent defined by where we come from. Central Europe is a natural living environment for Slovakia based on our history, geography and culture. After all, regional political cooperation is the essence of EU success. Franco-German cooperation, Weimar, Benelux, Baltics, or even the Visegrad Group are bringing new initiatives and ideas and thus strengthening our union. Slovakia currently holds the presidency of the Visegrad Group. Our main objective is to bring a positive agenda to strengthen the EU. Of course, we are aware of differences, maybe even criticism and misunderstandings, but at these challenging times, we need to keep everyone on board at the table and when we need to solve our disputes through dialogue. The European Union is the result of a strong vision and the immense efforts of several generations. We are simply obliged to protect it, especially now when Europe and Western democracies face dramatic new developments. We are surrounded by challenges coming from all directions, both from inside and outside Europe. We see growing Russian and Chinese aspirations, which require a strong and united EU response. We see that climate change can have an unpredictable economic, political and societal impact on our lives. We see a new wave of technological revolution, Industry 4.0. Europe, as we know it, will survive only if it stays in the forefront of technological progress and innovation. To achieve this, our governments have to become also governments 4.0. Moreover, we face many challenges coming from within Europe. Growing social differences, destroy original social contract. We face dramatic ageing of our societies. Regional socio-economic disparities do not contribute to a feeling of unity. Many people feel that they are being left behind. In this context, it is no surprise that mass immigration from countries outside the EU has caused new tensions and conflicts. We forgot to talk to our citizens about Europe, about democracy, about our plans for the future. When they hear no answers from us, they turn elsewhere. Lack of communication can become breeding ground for disinformation and fake news. One example was the British referendum in 2016. It is obvious that isolationism, protectionism and nationalism are not a solution. Our answer must not be fragmentation into small national states with limited resources, but stronger unity of the EU as a global power. Ladies and gentlemen, as my 17 colleagues have done already, let me be brave and determined in presenting my vision of our common future. A vision of an attractive union that citizens can trust and support. This still remains a valid message of the Bratislava Summit. First, a union which is united, prosperous and secure. Second, a union which is globally relevant. A union which is honest to its citizens, and a union which cares about its own future. However, we need to find a common path to achieve our ideals. So my question is, how shall we get there? First, we need to be united. Unity was the most frequently used word among my colleagues who have already addressed this House, and they are completely right. Without unity among the Member States, we would become subject to the decisions of others. We cannot be credible and successful in achieving our ideals if we do not overcome the last leftovers of the former East-West divide. We have to get rid of the stereotypes through which we perceive our differences. Here I would like to recall the words of the highly regarded Slovak politician Milan Hoxha, who served as a Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia in 1935-38, and back in 1942 he wrote, "European security cannot be built only in the West. It also requires Central Europe, and the common democratic ideals and institutions of both provide hope for the future." I believe that beyond differences and geographical boundaries, there lies a common interest. We need to communicate, try to understand each other, and perhaps go the extra mile on both sides. There are many positive examples of differences being overcome. To name just two major examples, the posting of workers or the dual food quality. On the other hand, there is one major issue on which we failed to communicate on both sides: migration. We must work out a solution that can work for everyone. Immigration must be manageable, and migration should serve the European interests. Yet, we cannot preserve political unity without achieving sufficient socio-economic convergence and cohesion in the EU. In other words, we must use prosperity for the benefit of all. We must mitigate the negative consequences of globalization and prevent tax avoidance by corporations. We have to make them consistently pay taxes in the countries where they really operate and generate their profits. We have to combat growing inequalities in society and redistribute wealth more efficiently. The introduction of a European minimum wage would be one way to create social solidarity. My government is particularly committed to the European Pillar of Social Rights, which should provide a strong social dimension in the European Union of the future. Slovakia also advocates fair labour mobility, which will allow our citizens and companies to seize the opportunities of the single market. And therefore, we welcome the agreement to establish the European Labour Authority, and we have already declared our intention of hosting it in our capital. Second, we need to be globally relevant. We need the EU, which plays an important global role, reflecting its economic power. We must take action to unify our forces and increase capacity building in defence. Therefore, Slovakia strongly supports permanent structured cooperation on security and defence, PESCO, while ensuring complementarity between the EU and NATO. Globally relevant also means that we should uphold our long-term commitments. We are not an exclusive club. We want to be an inclusive community, open for those who fulfil criteria and even for those who once left. It is in our strategic interest, otherwise somebody else will fill the vacuum around us. At the same time, global means having significant economic power, backed by a strong currency and based on free but fair international trade. The EU has to remain the champion in this regard. Third, we need to be honest to our citizens. We cannot promise our citizens a life without problems, hard work and challenges. The EU has no magic wand to solve all problems. However, we can offer our citizens a credible vision of our future and turn that vision into tangible deeds. We need to make our citizens, and above all young people, feel a sense of ownership. The EU is not some fictitious, distant Brussels. We are European Union. We need to confront those who tell us otherwise. Ignoring them or ridiculing them is not a solution. We need to challenge them by facts. The EU is now a large and strong community. It provides us with a collective identity, because there is something about the EU that is also personal. However, it does not take away our national or personal identity. Our unity must be a unity of values within the diversity of our national, regional and local cultures. And finally, the fourth, we need to care about the future. Soon, in the run-up to the European elections, you, the European political parties, will have an opportunity to present a new realistic vision of our Union. The European debate has become very lively and intense at many levels: political and civic, national and regional. My appreciation goes to President Macron, who has significantly stimulated these discussions with his own vision of the future, and I do agree with him. We cannot be trapped in the status quo and give way to resignation. We have to renew our Union. It is up to us, leaders, to find a common path and instruments which citizens can trust and support, because we need freedom, progress and protection in the European Union. We have to find a way of protecting the four freedoms that are at the core of EU integration. We need an EU-wide debate on what our strategy and aspirations should be for the middle of the century. The EU will certainly have to undergo a major transformation towards a climate-neutral economy. We need a transition which is socially just towards our citizens and fair towards our businesses. An important issue for the future development of the European economy is digitalisation and automation. On the one hand, there is a great concern that people will not have enough jobs because robots will replace them. On the other hand, there are great concerns about the lack of skilled workers on the market. Yet in the future, we shall need even more highly skilled people. The best evidence of this is that the countries with the highest number of robots per job, as Germany, South Korea, Singapore, have the lowest unemployment rate. There are currently around 151 robots per 10,000 working places in Slovakia. That is more than half the European average and the highest level in Central and Eastern Europe. And we should not be afraid of technological change. We only need to adopt smart and responsible policies. If we want to be honest in our aspiration for the future, we must have the right tools, such as the next multi-annual financial framework. The current EU budget represents only 1% of EU GNI. While focusing the budget on new challenges, we should not give up on cohesion policy. Calls for its reduction in the next MFF reflect a wrong understanding of the role of cohesion policy. It is indeed cohesion policy that helps rich and poor regions to converge and contributes to economic growth, even in difficult economic times. I mentioned that we need to speak about our future. And please, how can we speak about the new MFF without to have a clear vision of the European Union? I don't think that it is a right approach that first we see which kind of budget we have and then we decide what we can pay out of this budget. I think we should do it otherwise. First we have to see where we would like to be in the next 5, 7, 10, 15 years, which are our priorities, and then to decide how big and which kind of budget for our priorities we need. This is the approach which I like more than what we do in this moment. And when I speak about new technologies, please, we have to say very open that, and I'm not speaking about the European Parliament, but in general, at the European level, we are not able to catch the speed of the development in this area. We are always behind. We are facing a digital revolution, but we are not able to do some revolution in the regulatory framework. We are always behind. We are trying to regulate something which already people are using. And sometimes we are doing such a regulation that we over-regulate everything. And then we are crying why we are not at the same level than the United States or Asia, where the innovation environment is growing up. And we are still divided in 27 or 28 different regulations. So please, we need to think about some flexible regulatory framework, not to regulate each simple thing which is going on in our lives, because this is not the future in the digital revolution. We need to put only some basic rules on the table and some framework which is quite flexible enough, because we politicians are not able to act as fast as we need to act. And that's why I mentioned the world. If we speak about Industry 4.0, we need to push our member state that in their states we have also governments 4.0, because in this moment I think we have in some countries maybe government 2.0, somewhere maybe 3.0, but I'm not sure if we have somewhere governments 4.0, which are reflecting the needs of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the European elections are quickly approaching, and we need to mobilise our forces to fight against fake news, hybrid threats and cyber propaganda. Make people feel the urgency. Talk to them about the importance of the EU for their everyday lives. Make them understand that elections matter. That is their only opportunity to steer the EU, and they should not let others speak for them. There is a lot of work ahead of us. And let me finish my speech with the words of one of the founding fathers of European integration, Jean Monnet. People only accept change when they are faced with necessity, and only recognise necessity when a crisis is upon them. We must be brave and determined. We have to make changes and make the Union attractive to all. A Union that is able to learn from its past mistakes in order to prepare itself to embrace the future. And once again, we need a vision of an attractive Union that citizens can trust and support. Thank you for your attention.